we go. Hi guys! Whether it's a custom gas-powered power wheel with a 5-speed, or whether it's a dragster that does 35 plus miles per hour and 100 feet, or whether it's a mud mower, the MST series of transmission is one of my favorite types. But if you're gonna abuse something, you're gonna eventually break it. And that's why we're here at this video today. I've got 3 transmissions here, all in a broken form in some way. We're gonna rip them all open, try and take 3 and make 2. This one here came out of my mud mower. You saw in a recent video over on RCG Racing. Well, that doesn't spin, and it's supposed to. Shifts through all the gears. You can put it in neutral and turn the shaft. So we're gonna find out what's going on with that. This one here is utterly cracked across the entire top of it. And basically he dropped the clutch and all of a sudden something went toaster strudels inside. Hi Andrew, so what are we doing here?
Swapping out a transmission.
Why are we swapping transmissions?
Because I broke the other one.
Yeah, that's mud mower life.
Well, you should show him a picture of the other one, Neil.
Okay, I will.
That's kind of violent.
So we're going to break this one open in order to use for parts. Now one thing I'd like to go and point out is that MST206s are pretty much all universally swappable in parts for about the last 30 years worth of production. The only difference you will run into occasionally is you will end up running into the cases. There are 2 bolts right here that are coming through the bottom of the case, but you can universally use newer cases. See all the shininess? Bolted up to an old 1990s case. All of it is interchangeable. The only thing that changed is a couple of little things on the cases, like a few reinforcements. But if it is an MST and it has 1, 2, 3, 4 ribs, it's MST for me is how you remember it. All the parts interchange. And last but not least, this one looks as if it's in perfect condition. There's nothing wrong with it. The axles turn great. The input shaft turns great, except for the problem is the axle on this side is totally bent. Before we get ripping into this machine, I wanted to point out that the back end has never looked right since I brought it home. So what we've done is just a redneck pointer right here at the axle, and if I spin this, you can see that axle rotate around the pointer. Move that over just a little. And there we go. So we got to pull that axle out. Luckily we've got a few spares and rebuild that before we get really going on this project. So let's start ripping these things apart. as you can see, I've got a throwaway shirt on, I've got throwaway pants on, I got a shirt I got for free, and my hands are already covered in grease just moving these things around. So I don't usually do the whole, hey, wear rubber gloves thing, but we're going to for this. Now, one thing you're going to need if you're doing this is a good set of snap ring pliers. This set here is definitely the best set I have found for working on this, along with doing transmissions and stuff. I'll make sure I post a link down in the description on where I bought these. Yep, still solid. Alright, let's find a 3/8. Let's ooga dooga around the outside of this thing and see if we can get all of these to come off and pop this thing. Now, if you're doing this, you do not have to take the brake assembly off if all you're doing is popping this to be able to, say, lock or an axle or swap a few things. But if you're going to be working on rearranging gears and stuff like that, then you definitely are going to need to pull the brakes. And I'm just checking these to make sure these aren't bent. Otherwise, they'll need to be thrown away. If one of these is bent and you go to put it back in, even with an inch-pound ooga dooga, you will snap it in the case. So, we're opening this in order to hopefully have whatever we need for that one in the upper end. And we're hoping that the axles can go in this one. At least that's what we're hoping. Now, one thing I noticed is nobody put the two in the bottom that are supposed to be there. So we don't have to take those out, but normally we would on one of this age. And when we pull this off, we need to watch for the ball that's in there and get that spring out of there. Now I can feel half of this cover is already loose just from the brake. So we might be able to get it to walk the rest of it off. There we go. Take the last two out. Now, you want to be careful when you're ripping into there. There's a seal in both of those. And if it's been upgraded for off-roading with bearings in the back of it by somebody, you don't want to be stabbing into them. This one here does not have bearings upgraded. Okay, so what we're going to do at this point is we're going to pull up and we're going to tap on the input shaft for the gear shift. So that bearing is good. Seems to be perfectly fine. If you want to vent these, this right here you can tap into in order to be able to vent, but you've got to put a 90 or something to bring it out to the side. That input sounds fine. It looks as if I don't see any actual impact mark anywhere on the inside of the case. But it definitely looks like it pressed up in this area the most, which is right here. So let's see how that moves. If we get down in here, you'll see this really weird chunk right here. That is the leftovers of a brass bushing. that brass bushing is this one right here that's missing. So most likely what happened is these brass bushings are keyed. You can see that on the edge there's a little bit of a shape to them. And if you go to put this together and you don't put it with the key correctly, this is what happens. As you can see, this one also has a key that goes this way. And on this one here, there's another key, which if we turn it, you'll see right there, there's that key, which is supposed to be settled in going that direction. So my bet would be, if we get into our box of goodies over here, see, we've got a box of MST goodies, we might be able to find one of those end caps and put it back together. But we still need axles, so we're going to have to look in the group there. And I've got an upper, newer piece, which, by the way, if you blow out the input gear, right here is where you'll crack your case. So that's just quick steel pressed in. And if you go to make a patch like this, what you want to do is push the quick steel through, hold your thumb against it, press with your other hand so that it makes a crimp around the outside of the fracture. Alright, now let's rip that one apart and see what's going on in there. Okay, before I go any further on this, the one thing that you have to do is make sure that you find your spring and with a magnet fish out your ball bearing, and most of the time your ball bearing goes that way and gets stuck in the reverse gear like that one. If you don't get that ball bearing out of there, I guarantee you will explode this transmission the first time you put it into reverse. Also, if you're looking for hubs that you can punch out in order to make racing mowers or mud mowers or whatever, MST older style transmissions have easier to punch out hubs. So here's the 3-inch transmission pulley that I made using one of these. And if you grind off those right there, you can punch the entire center hub out and then weld it into whatever size you want for racing or mud mowers. This was a little too small for racing. This is a 5-inch. This is what I run from Tractor Supply on my mud mower. Works really good. Alright, so let's get ooging and see what's inside of this. Now, we already took out the gear selector piece, and I just wanted to show you that this is the style that's on there versus this Allen set screw style. And that Allen set screw style, which you can get at Tractor Supply, by the way, if you destroy one of these, will go right in there. Now, I prefer this because I can weld a nut onto it if it's really stuck and always get it out, but those work also. Now, I don't know why it is, but for some reason, the one that is behind the brake caliper is always very, very, very rusted. Don't be surprised if it breaks. I have put many of these together without that one there, and they run for years. Oh, we got lucky on that one. one needs more love. Now, this is the side with the bent axle, so I was kind of expecting this to be bound. There we go. There's our first broken one. It happens a lot with these. Don't worry about it too much. I put them back together with upwards of about 3 broken bolts in them. And as long as you're just mowing grass, they're perfectly fine. If you're going to mud mow with it or race with it, what you do is you drill that all the way through and you put a 1/4-inch bolt through it that you can buy at Tractor Supply or your local hardware store. Alright, let me go beat this back out of here and we'll see if we can pop that thing open. Alright, so we got all of our top bolts out. No matter what, don't forget there's 2 down there, or else you will hate yourself, you will swear at life, and you'll end up posting some comment on some forum asking why it won't open. Oh, I'm sorry, forums are for old people like me. On some Facebook group, like Maine Mud Mowers, or Sprocket's Garage. And that's Maine is in the state, and no, it's not part of Canada. I'm sorry that you failed at high school. Alright. Now, this one is definitely stuccoed. So I've got several screwdrivers here. And apparently that one didn't want to play. That's alright, we can go fishing. Alright, in any negotiation, always know when to bring in the bargaining chip. There we go. That's all it takes is just getting one in that edge. Then you get another one in the front edge, and it should go. Now, if you could hear a little closer, right now you would hear it actually popping through, which is a rather creepy noise the first time that you hear it. Oh, there goes the rest of it right there. You hear that pop? Now remember, your shifter is going to be stuccoed, which is the other reason why we needed a hammer, because a lot of times the shifter in these is a matter of negotiation, and that negotiation is usually done with a hammer. That screwdriver would work a lot better if it wasn't apparently used as a pry bar by my 8-year-old. Sorry, 9-year-old. He just had a birthday. If I'm going to complain about him, I might as well use the right age, right? There he goes. Okay, so yet again, that input, we're going to hold this with our hand, and we're just going to give it a thump and try and knock it down through. Don't be surprised if you screw up a bunch of stuff internally and have to rearrange it. And I managed to get that stupid shifter back into the slot and stuck. There we go. There. So now all we got to do is just lift this axle out, set this axle in, throw this one away so that we don't accidentally try and use it again. Should be good to go. Alright. Last but not least, let's rip apart this one. Now earlier I was talking about how this is an older top on a newer bottom. All I did was I just drilled out where the case meets up in the center so that I could go and put through bolts in it. Now if you end up with a new and an old bottom, then all you do is just put a bolt straight through and put a nut and a lock washer on the other side. There's nothing special about these. In fact, every single one of these, except for one or two very select parts, you can still buy every single part that's in these from Sears Parts Direct. I'll post a link down below. Now, this one has been upgraded. It has bearings in it. I'll post a link for the bearings in the description. Well, that's not a good sign. Currently, the brake is attempting to lift out when I lift this. So something is very, very bound on the inside of this. Alright, let's see what we apparently blew up. Because that's not letting go of the brake and refusing to come loose there. That really should pop off of there, and it's not. There it goes. Nope. There we go. Well, I give. I don't see anything broken. Okay, can you guys see that? Let me readjust you a bit. Okay. So I'm going to turn the input gear. That input gear is not moving. That turns freely. That turns freely. So somewhere in there is our ball for the transmission. We'll see if we can fish that out. Like I said, it usually falls down next to the reverse gear. Nope. Well, that's not good. That's chunks. Alright, let's figure out why it seized, shall we? Well, that is burnt. You can see that it's discolored. That side is burnt and discolored. And it will not come out of there. Well, we're right here. You want to see the difference between a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 speed? It's that little blocker right there. There's a blocker there, there's a blocker there. You can take and you can put a 6 gear into this. Anything that is a 4-speed, a 5-speed, and a 6-speed, all your internals are interchangeable. That is not happy. It does not want to come out of there. There it goes. Now, just to confirm, I want to see if this input will spin. Yeah, that input bearing is not the greatest, but it is spinning. See, normally when you blow up this input bearing and the input shaft, normally it ends up eating this way and it blows a hole through that sidewall. Or the input will seize entirely. Alright, let's see if I can do this with you guys being able to see what I'm doing here. So that one spins. That one spins now. Those are solid like they're supposed to be. Let's take this off. I don't see any scouring or anything. I don't see any scouring on that one either. And these are geared. See, they've got right there, they've got splines. So that's not supposed to move. Well, I retract my previous statement. I did overheat something, but it wasn't the bushings, and I did screw something up. So this is a functional one. As you can see, this spins nicely. This is your reverse gear side. And this is your input gear for the other side, which spins with all of these. This is that gear, which would not spin, no matter what I did. So a 12-ton press later, I'm going to try and hold this up for you guys. On the inside of that, right there, can you see that? It is gouged. It was riding up on one side. The entire center of this and the entire shaft is covered in metal scrapings. So what that did was it, right there, bound up solid. Will not spin at all. No good. So that shaft is done for. That gear is done for. We're going to pull this one out of the parts one and throw this in using the bushing that came off of this and the gears that came out of this one. So if we take this and we pop this off, we should be able to take this and put this on. And then take this and drop this on. And hopefully we have the same exact first gear there. Otherwise this is gonna not want to go in. And that goes that way. So that is reverse, so that lines up. So you just set that on and drop it in. And there we go. Happy again. We're going to do our input bearings for the input shaft right here. So you punch one direction, you punch one the other direction, and then you drive them back in. These are 5/8 by 13/16. I'll post a link in the description for you. But I'm going to do that real quick, and then we'll see if we can throw this back together. Oh, there we go. We got everything put back in on transmission number 1. so that we can get the mud mower back up and running to be able to go finish out the rest of the season. I really should scrape all of this clean. I really should clean it all up, but I'm not going to bother until I tear this thing down for winter to put it away. Because I run in so many swampy areas, inevitably these get water in them and I have to tear down the mud mower transmission before it freezes. So we're just getting this done enough to be able to go rack it around in the woods for one last month and throw it back together. And then rip it back apart. Now, I know a lot of you are looking for some great Buddha monk, this is what I use for a mix in my transmissions in order to go off-roading and all that other kind of stuff. The answer to your question is, I don't have a mix. I used to. I used to think it was important. I used to care about all of that stuff. I used to have certain amounts that I put in of stuff and all that other kind of jazz. But what I basically discovered was that if you weren't willing to go and put in grease that was marine grade grease, which you buy in a blue tube at Tractor Supply or anywhere that sells bearings for trailers that go into the salt water, if you weren't willing to spring in order to buy a tube of that, all the rest of it really doesn't matter. Because that right there is an open bearing race that goes all the way into the transmission, along with a couple of other points. And so, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, if you put this thing underwater and it stays there more than a few minutes, it's going to have water in it, and you're going to have to deal with it. So, for the mud mower transmissions, I just don't care. I throw anything and everything into them, and they love it. Now, let me get this put back together, and then we can check and make sure that it shifts and see if we can get one more done. Okay, now we put our ball bearing in, put our spring in, and we put in our set screw, and you're going to screw the set screw in until it's level with the top of the surface. There we go. At this point, we should be able to shift it and double check that it actually does what it's supposed to. That's a promising start. Alright, so reverse, that works. Fifth gear, and that works. We're going to call that a success. Neutral. One down, one more to go. So this is the bent axle transmission. This is the one that came from my friend who exploded something. We've got a bad caliper on this transmission. We know the caliper is rebuilt on that one. So we're just going to swap those over. It's just 2 3/8 bolts and slam it on there. No big deal there. As far as swapping axles is concerned, if you can do it, the easiest way to swap axles is to press in and lift and set out. This is the axle set that's bent, so we're gonna go and pull those axles out and swap in a set of short shaft axles to rebuild this case here. But we've got that, we're all set. Now we're gonna go and set, if you set your thumb on the top of the axle and lift, it gives you a little more control. We're just gonna try to lift it up. Nope, not gonna happen. Gonna collapse. Alright, we're gonna have to do it the old school way. Okay, set those in. Set your axle down in. Tip it over, putting your thumb on the other side, and lay it down. Now we're going to use here to slowly rotate it so that it's square, like so. Now what we're going to do is we're going to lift it up by the bull gear, set this in at an angle, and see if we can get it to settle in correctly the first try. Never happens, but we're going to try it. Nope, lost it. Alright, so right now I'll grab the camera and show you this. See how that's kitty wampus? We need to reset for this up in here. So see how they're off? So we need to take this one that's nice and square. We need to put it in right in here on this side and then drop it down in. So let's try it again. We're going to lift it. Going to insert the axle. Then we're going to drop the whole thing down. And it would help if I wasn't hitting the case on the other side. Just like that. So at this point, you should be able to spin it without any binding. I think we're off by 1 tooth. I think that's why we're binding. We're going to try and pull it and rotate it by 1 tooth. Right there. See, when you get it right, it just spins. There's no argument. It just goes right around. So if this is in neutral, then this right here just drops right in. You got to make sure to get your keys correctly. The inner one goes towards the rear diff. The outer one goes towards the shifter, like so. And at this point, we should be able to clean all this up, put some goop on it, throw it back together, and have a working transmission. Yet again, this one's going in an off-roader, so I really don't care because I'm going to have to tear it apart for water later. We'll get it thrown together. Yeah, something's not happy. I gotta break that apart again. Alright, I'll be right back. Let's try putting it all together again, round 2. So turns out I was rushing in order to finish the video, and I had that turned a little bit kitty-wampus, and I had that one turned a little bit kitty-wampus. So when I only had 1 or 2 bolts in it, it was okay. But the moment I tightened it down, that ended up crimping, locked the whole thing up, and I had to try again. Well, let's try round 2. Alright, let's try this again, only hopefully done correctly. As before, the axle shaft is in the up position so that you can see what's going on. That should be reversed. And it is. If we go 1 click towards the right, that should be neutral. And 1 more click should be first. And the axle's moving. And 5 more clicks should be 6th gear. And it moves way faster now. There. Now the next diesel project over on RCG Racing will have a transmission. Alright guys, you can probably see the weather is about to get really nasty. Hopefully you can see me right now. So the third transmission I'm going to throw together out of some junkyard parts. And that's why I'm saying this is a 3 = 2. Because the third transmission, if I didn't have all the other random parts left over, I wouldn't be able to put together. We're going to get the other transmission thrown into Mud Wizard. And then get to some more cleanup around this place and other projects. Have fun. Well, congratulations on staying to the end of this video. What I've decided for my ice racer that I'm going to try is those are Briggs & Stratton valve springs. That is a Briggs & Stratton valve spring binding up those spider gears, but yet still allowing them to turn once they get torqued a bit. And that is 2 MST206 axles that have been welded on the ends and then cut off flush so that that should fit in between them. What do you think? Think that'll be fun to play with?